Good morning, House of AC. This is a fun one. Different time zone sort of situation. I'm recording this at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, but it's 10:30 p.m. with our guest today over in Sydney, Australia, Lyssa Borham. It's going to be a fun one. I really always enjoy just learning how real estate's done in every city and different states, and that extends to different countries as well. I'm the type of person whenever I go on vacation, I am, what I enjoy doing on vacation, go looking at homes, and I probably have no intention ever to buying one, but I will stop into every real estate office, get their little flyers. If there's a little open house, I pull up Zillow app on my phone, regardless of where I'm at, United States or traveling abroad. So I just love to hear how real estate's being done in different cities and different countries, and that's why I'm so excited about our guest today. Before we get to that, just wanted to say thanks for listening to House of AC. This is sponsored by Jasmine Mortgage Team. That's where I go to get my mortgages. If you want to buy anything residential related, Jasmine Mortgage is the place to go for your HELOCs purchases, whether it's primary investing as a first-time primary house as a first-time home buyer or investing. They've got the team that will hold your hand. It costs nothing to call or fill out an application. JasmineMortgageTeam.com. Just reach out. It's a 15-minute chat, and they'll say, hey, you're approved for a loan or you're not approved for a loan, or do XYZ, and then you will be approved for a loan. With the rising interest rates and everything, everyone's sort of scared, and they're saying, hey, do I wait to buy a home? I don't think that's a good idea. And I listen, I'm biased in many ways, is probably the way you look at it, because I'm a realtor. I got a realtor team, and I'm pushing mortgages, but I always think getting on the property ladder is a good thing. Historically, interest rates, we're still historic lows. The average over the last 50 years of interest rates has been about 6.5%, and we're still below the average. The highest that was in the 70s was 20% interest rate. So it feels like we are in it feels expensive now to buy a house, but in the last 20 years, it's always felt expensive, up until 2009 when everything crashed and we just had this surplus of inventory. Did it not feel expensive? It felt cheap. And then everyone was scared to buy a house, right? So what would change that? Really, we have to have a ton of inventory hitting, houses being built, houses being flipped. We just don't have that inventory. The supply chain of construction materials is just so delayed. It's hard to just flip homes quickly and get them on the market. And so I don't see that changing anytime. Possibly now, the first time probably since 2008, I'd recommend getting an ARM. That's an adjustable rate mortgage that we have here, 5-year ARM, a 7-year ARM, 10-year ARM. Why is that? Experts, what I'm reading, what I'm seeing out there, are saying, hey, we're probably going to be in we're about 5.5% to 6% right now as I record this on June 20th. It'll probably go up to 6.5%, maybe 7.5%, which is when I got my first property 22 years ago. It was 7.5%, and I was jumping up and down because I got the best interest rate of anyone I knew. But why you want to get this ARM is because then the thought is, and the theory is, that in 5 years from now, probably less than that, the experts are saying 3 to 5 years, it'll probably inch back down to 4% and 3% with all the sort of rising of the interest rates of the federal government and trying to curb inflation. We really do see a drawback expected in 2 to 3 years in those interest rates. So what does that mean? Well, if you get a 5-year ARM, what that means is it's a 30-year amortization. So you have the same payments, but you're locked in for 5 years. And so during those 5 years, if the rates drop, you can always refinance to a lower rate if you want. So if it only takes 2 years and we're down to 4%, 3%, go ahead and refinance and then switch it to a 30-year fixed. 5-year ARM, if you don't do anything at the 5th year, it'll just readjust to that market's interest rates. Possibly in 5 years, interest rates are down. And what's great is that loan will adjust automatically down. So if they are in 4 years, you don't even have to do a refinance. It'll just switch and say, hey, we were locked for 5 years, and then now we're just going to follow the market. So in 5 years, it'll drop to 4%. Now, where people got stuck last time is in that 5 year window, it went up to like 7%, 8%. And all of a sudden, their payments got a little bit higher and higher, and they weren't prepared for that. So all this to say is you can use an ARM as a vehicle as a tool to really sort of benefit you, lock in a good rate right now and just monitor the markets. Listen to this show. I'm going to tell you when to do those refinances, and you'll be good to go. Here's the other thing. A lot of people were like, well, houses are too expensive. I'm just going to wait for the crash, and then I'm going to save. I'm going to work a little bit harder and save a little bit more so that I can, wait till prices drop and I'll move. You cannot outsave the market, meaning saving an extra $10,000, $20,000 to buy a house next year. It's a losing ball game because next year the houses are going to be $25,000 to $30,000. Like you can't outsave the rising real estate market. And a thing I've talked about before, I believe on this show was there's last 12 years the average U.S. homeowner, anyone who owned a home on average earned $55,000 in equity on their house just by doing nothing but owning a house. It just raised in value $55,000. Now the average U.S. salary is $52,000. So that just by getting on the property ladder and waiting a year, that's like the average salary in the United States earning you money. It's not money that you spend, but your net worth has gone up that amount. And I don't see these things changing. Everyone's going to need a house to live, and waiting for the perfect time is just never going to come. And if you are renting right now, I just want to let you know you're already paying a mortgage. You're paying your landlord's mortgage. That landlord, you may think their landlord's evil or greedy. That's not the case, because that landlord's expenses are going up too. Maybe they have a fixed rate mortgage, most likely they do, but property taxes are going up, utility bills are going up, servicing industry, the landscaping, the pest control, all those third party vendors, their prices are going up. So do you think the landlord's just going to say, man, this house is going to lose me money now? No, they're going to say, man, it's more expensive for me to run this small business of owning the house that I rent out. I'm going to have to charge higher as well. And that goes down to the renter. So that renter is going to be charged more as well. So your costs are going to go up. Just spend that money on yourself, on your own house, rather than spending money on your landlord's house. And this is sort of where I want to segue to our guest today. So Lyssa Borham is Sydney, Australia based, and I'm going to bring her in, and we're going to talk how things are done in Australia, her goals in retrieving house fire, also the balancing act of her working a full-time job, but also starting her own entrepreneurial enterprise. All these things I support, and I want all my listeners to as well. And hear that, like, maybe starting your own business is not as scary as it feels like, as it sounds, and maybe ease into it. You don't have to just go cold turkey, quit your day job to start a brand new company in a brand new field. We're going to get the tips and tricks from Lyssa and get started. So let's bring her into the show. Hey, Lyssa, thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Alan. Thank you so much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Well, you've got the top ranking right now of best accents on my show, so congratulations.
Thank you. I've spent a lot of time perfecting it.
So let's talk a little bit first, sort of what your passions, your interest around financial independence, retiring early, and if they're related to real estate, that's great. I just sort of want to first get our audience up to speed on your story.
Yeah, sure. So I was talking with my parents last night, actually, trying to work out where the interest came from in regards to real estate and wanting to be financially independent and things like that. And I couldn't really pinpoint an exact point in time, but I realized my upbringing had a lot to do with it, as many people's do. And my parents instilled in myself and my siblings from a very young age the value of a dollar, and realizing what like budgeting and things like that can mean. And so from a very young age, we got pocket money, we got chores, we had to squirrel away our savings and things like that. So it was a bit of a scarcity mindset, I suppose, that was fostered quite young. It wasn't that we wanted for anything. We were a very, privileged middle class family, and it was a great upbringing. And they weren't investors by any means. They were very much of the old school mentality that you get married, you buy a house, and you live in it and pay it off for the rest of your life type of vibe. But when I was about 25, I was still living at home, and my parents started a bit of a finance incentive / rule, I suppose, that we were paying board, but it was quite nominal. But at the age of 25, it would be going up if we still wanted to live at home. And there were two options. You could either continue living at home and pay the full rate of rent to the parents, or we could continue paying our nominal amount of board to them per week and save the difference towards our future home deposit. And they would have to have access or be able to see the account just to make sure that we were actually saving it and not squirreling it away at booze and things like that. So I think around the age of 25 is when I started more of that future thinking and utilizing my frugal habits for a greater good for my own benefit, I suppose.
No, I love that method. Obviously, paying rent and you're living at home is a very good motivator, because otherwise you could be paying rent and not living at home. And
Exactly.
at 25, that I assume that could be really attractive. Yeah, I see a lot of first time home buyers. I talk to them a lot of times, and they're like, "Hey, I'm moving back at home so I can save up for that first down payment," which I think is a smart move. I think it should be time bound, so it doesn't turn into a 10-year saving thing. Like
Yes.
I said at the top of the show, you can't outsave, but yeah, you have to save something for that initial purchase of real estate. So, so how long did you live at home before you were able to save enough money to buy your first property in Australia?
So it was probably a good 2 years from then that I just buried my head in research and really tried to work out what I could borrow to buy, and then from there what I could buy and where. And so I'm born and raised in Sydney, and realised pretty quickly I couldn't afford to buy in Sydney. So I started looking further afield on the eastern seaboard, and the local governments at the time were offering incentives for first home buyers, where I think in New South Wales, where I live, it was about $7,000 they would put towards your first home purchase. And Queensland, so North, the sunny state, they were offering $15,000 towards the home deposit. So pretty quickly started looking up there, and was going to, at the time, I knew it was always going to be a long-term investment, but I was young, all my friends were starting to, get married and have kids, and I was single at the time, so I thought, why not? I'll start looking further afield for a bit of a sea change, and narrowed down onto a few different areas in Queensland and where I could buy that ticked all my boxes. So it needed to have, a train line, easy commuting distance to a major city, supermarkets, things like that. And what I could purchase in this particular area that I narrowed down on was a 4-bedroom standalone home, 2 bath, 2 garage, huge backyard, brand new build. And there was also a massive Westfield that had been approved to be built in this particular suburb that I decided to go towards. So all the signs were pointing to this particular location, and so decided that was that. So it was about a 2-year research process, attending any kind of seminar that I possibly could, soaked up as much information, books, videos, all of those kind of things, spoke to experts. And
All right.
yeah.
So you bought this house for the purpose of living in it, or to get roommates and rent it out, or to make it an investment property? Because I would
knew
imagine those
long-term-
down payment programs typically require you to live in the property for a certain amount of time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. So you needed to live in it, I think, a minimum of 6 months for the first
Oh,
12,
wow, that's pretty low.
something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. But if it was at least a year, but if you did move out before that, you'd have to pay the government back prorated.
Got it.
And so the idea was I would live in it as my first home, and if it was going to be a long-term investment, I hadn't exactly decided, but I wanted to see how the first year went. And
Right.
so eventually when it was built, I did move in and live there for almost a year, and now it's rented out.
Oh, awesome. So let's first, I'm curious, how does buying a house work in Australia? The little that I know, from what I understand, people don't have agents representing the buyer on occasion. No.
Not always. There are buyers agents
Yeah.
as well as selling agents, but usually it's pretty much a solo expedition,
Okay.
and the agents involved are only on behalf of the seller most of the time.
Okay. Interesting. So you don't work, like, if you're house shopping, you don't work with a real estate agent. You just look online and go talk to that agent, and then you talk to this agent, and you talk to that agent. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can hire brokers for a fee, but yeah, at that point in time, I was definitely trying to
Right.
squirrel my pennies, so
Yeah.
did it all myself.
So, and then to me, that seems, and I'm used to the opposite here in the United States. That seems like this is your biggest purchase. It's probably learning a whole new language. You had to do research for 2 years.
Hmm.
To me, that's why you get a buying real estate agent who's like, hey, I can get you a house in 30 days.
Yes, yes. I actually, when I first decided to do a bit of a trip up to the Gold Coast to have a look around, a broker or a sales agent, no, what are they called? But that kind of
Yeah,
buyer's
buying agent.
agent, that's it.
Yeah.
Yes, I did tee up with one of them, and they did drive me around the area, and they told me a lot about the local economy and things like that. So it was good to get that insider knowledge, but it was very salesy, it was very pushy,
Yeah.
and he was trying to tell me that there was no houses possible in my price range. I had to go for this extra whiz bang builder, and I had to
Yeah.
go and do all, to this particular estate and things like that. And because I had done all my own due diligence, I knew he was lying.
Okay.
So it rubbed me up the wrong way, I think.
Yeah, no, I would have imagined that, no one wants to be sold a
Mm.
service to go buy a house, but
Hmm.
I think the feeling here is like I want a partner in buying a house, but I think
Yeah.
it's like I've never felt like I've had to sell myself, but it's
Mm.
like I teach real estate, and people are like, oh, I want that guy to help me, right?
Yes.
So that they
That's how
come
it
to
should
me.
be.
It's inbound, yeah, rather than outbound,
Yes.
yeah. Okay, so and what's the typical terms on like a mortgage in Australia? I know you're not an expert, mortgage expert there, but like, is it here in the United States? From what I understand, is unusual. We have a 30-year fixed term where you get a mortgage and you just pay for 30 years over, and it's spread it out, and that's unusual, and why real estate investing and home buying is so great in America.
Mm.
Does Australia have something similar to that, or what's the
Not
average?
really.
Yeah.
The length of time is similar in 30-year mortgages, yes, but the interest rate is definitely not fixed. You can fix portions of it. So with my first loan, I went interest only, fixed for a year or two, but then the interest rate went to principal and interest, and a variable interest rate after that period of time. So yeah, it's definitely not the regular thing. It can go all over the place.
Oh, so you get a 30-year mortgage, and then it adjusts every year to
Hmm.
whatever the interest rate is. Oh, that's that. Wow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, even at the moment, our Reserve Bank has just raised our base cash rate twice in the last 2 months. And so if you're on a variable rate, like I am with one of my loans, it's gone up.
Yeah.
And it's what you sign on for, I suppose, if you are going variable. You can fix it if you want, but it comes with catches.
Okay. So, well, let's fact check what I said at the top of the show. Your interest rate on your house that you're renting out goes up. Do you eat that cost, or do you raise the rent on your tenants?
It depends at what point your tenant's lease is at. So
Yeah, of
at the
course.
moment, yeah, both of my leases were renewed February, March. So they're locked in for a year each. So I can't change the rent within that time. So yeah, I'm eating that additional cost in mortgage.
But then at the end of that lease, you would adjust your lease terms, right?
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
so, as tenants, are they constantly expecting their lease to be, like, have wild swings as well?
I suppose so. I mean, the tenants I had in my Queensland property just before these current tenants, I had them in, they signed right at the time of COVID beginning 2 years ago.
Yeah.
There were whispers around this virus, and the house was empty between tenants for a week or two. And my property manager was telling me, look, we don't know what's happening. You need to lock them in. And they wanted 2 year. And at that point, I was like, okay, yep, no worries. That sounds good to me. So I locked them in for the 2 years. So they knew within that time that they wouldn't. But at the end of the 2 years, which came up at the beginning of this year, they did realize obviously the markets across the world have been significantly affected,
Right.
and that's also trickled down into the rental market. So I think they were paying $465 a week for their home, and I've just now released it to new tenants at $620 a week. So,
Wow. So you do the terms per week, and
or
then they
rent per
also
week.
commit to
Yeah.
2 years, but they pay by each week.
Yes, correct.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Well,
Mm.
here that you pay like once a month kind of thing.
Oh, I mean, there probably are. If you wanted to negotiate it that way, if they get paid monthly, then if they
Yeah.
wanted to pay the rent monthly, that's also an option. But it's much more common to do weekly.
I mean, as a landlord, I would love to get it once a once a week, because then you notice if someone's behind on rent
Yes,
within much quicker. Yeah.
exactly, exactly.
So I think that's pretty favorable.
Mm.
So then, and is this your only rental property?
No, I've got a second one as well that I bought at the end of last year.
Okay. And then did you buy that with intention to live in it, or to just rent it out and never move in?
Yeah, again, I think that one, it is going to be my future home,
Mhm.
but short term, an investment as well. So, another good thing through COVID is I've lived in and out of home over the last 2 years as well with my family. So, I've again been privileged to be able to move back home to assist in my borrowing capacity and buy that second property too. So, at the moment, I'm rent vesting, I suppose.
So I love the foresight here. Hey, I don't want to live at home, so I'm going to buy a property, and then you buy it out. You're like, I
There
can
we
make
go.
some money renting this out, so I'm going to move back home so I can rent out the house
Exactly.
that I bought, and then so I can save money to buy a second house to rent out. And
Exactly.
I love that hustle and that motivation to whatever it takes to kind of get
Yeah.
on that property ladder and move on
Thank
up.
you.
And from what I hear, or like when a house goes for sale in Australia, is the majority of them go on auction, or is it a sort of a bidding war situation, or how does what's the typical? And again, I know you're not speaking for the entire country in every transaction, but I
Thank
just
you.
hear things every now and then.
Yeah, sure. Well, definitely in a hot market, I say the majority or a heavy proportion anyway of sales going to auction for sure. Because at the moment, well, over the last 2 years anyway, it has been a seller's market. So going to auction it can be seen as the better way to get the higher price because obviously it can be an emotional purchase. And when you're fighting one on one or, a few people at a time, that can drive the price up. So homes around where I live in Sydney went crazy through auctions that they were guided at a particular price and would go hundreds of thousands of dollars over the reserve, which would be the set price that had been advertised.
All right, so you go to a bank first or a mortgage lender and say, "Hey, this is my finances." They say, "Lyssa, you've got pre-qualification for X amount of dollars, right?"
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then you go to auction sites, or you go talk to that agent and that agent, that agent, and then you just put on your offer online, and you're just like, "Well, I know what my limit is, so I'll start low and then when it hits your limit, you just stop bidding." Is that sort
Exactly.
of okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So if you bid at an auction and you win, you have to pay it. Like there is absolutely no way you can get out of it. So you
Okay.
have to have pre-approval from the banks, and yeah, a definite way to pay for it.
And then once you acquire the home, you hire a home inspector to make sure there's no kangaroo infestation or anything like that.
Yes, and drop bears. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
pretty horrible around here. Yes, so yeah, it's I've bought my properties a treaty sale, I think we call it here, so not at auction, and thankfully we get a cooling off period. So if we have an offer accepted, we generally have between 30 days to 6 weeks, and within that time it's conditional, and that would be on the pest inspections and building inspections and yeah, looking for those kangaroos and whatnot. And if that all comes through, then it can go unconditional.
Okay, awesome.
Mm,
Well, thanks for walking me through that. I want to switch
mm,
gears a little bit now to sort of the fire process,
mm.
process that you're in, and then also sort of your entrepreneurial process. Um, you have a day job, is that correct?
I do, yes. So I'm working as a partnerships and marketing manager in the financial services
Okay,
industry.
okay, and so outside of that, you're obviously doing a lot with real estate, and um, but you've also started your startup business of
Mm.
sorts.
Yeah, so it's only recent, within the last couple of months. I wish I had done it earlier. I've always had a bit of an entrepreneurial mind, I suppose, always thinking up different schemes or ways to, get rich quick. I say my 9 to 5 is my get rich slow scheme,
Mhm.
but the job is a way to finance that adventure of going out on my own, which I have done recently. And it's Duprez Productions. It's a podcast production agency, and we specialize in real estate related podcasts. And yeah, so it's something I've always wanted to do, but decided now with the borders opening here in Australia early this year, I thought this is the time that, again, still, living at home, the conditions are perfect for me to be able to trial while I'm working full time, and I can do the other business on the side, hustling nights, weekends, lunch breaks, all of that.
Okay, so podcast production, you're like behind the scenes. Is that sort of the business, the Duprez?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So my role is, as the director, I'm more of the client relationship management and um, making sure everything moves smoothly for the clients and making sure the team's happy and things like that. So I've got two professional editors on board. I've got a marketing manager and an account manager as well. So I work with them and making sure my social media is up and running and we're posting regularly. So I've got a great girl helping me with that. And yeah, it's all
So
hustling.
so to start a company with a niche of real estate in Australia,
Mm.
does that mean everyone is like craving real estate podcast over there, or what? Why this niche?
It's a personal interest of mine. So I thought I I don't proclaim to be an expert in the topic matter, but it's a definite passion and interest project. So I thought I wanted to combine something I'm interested in with podcasting as well. I'm really interested in podcasting and always listening to podcasts when I'm commuting, walking, all of that kind of thing. And the whole process, I'm very logistically minded. So I've worked as an event manager for the most part of my adult life. So I'm very logical and I love processes and things like that. So it just really seemed to fall into place there with that project management hat. And yeah, it all has just kind of come together nicely.
So I mean, I did a little bit of this where when I was working my 9 to 5 software project management, I mean, I my monitor, it was just house listings and Zillow listings. And every time my boss came by, he's like, "Why are you always doing real estate?" And then I'd like try to
Yes.
hide it. And then I
Yep.
started booking a conference room for like 2 hours a day every single day, so that I could just do that search for houses and read about real estate in the conference room for 2 hours. And I never got no one caught on to that. But I think also I was balancing. It was a balancing act. I was doing pretty good at the day job. I got all my tasks done. Like I would,
Mm,
any task, I would just knock it out as fast as I possibly can, and then so I could
yes.
focus on what I was doing. So everyone's like, Alan's doing his own thing. How
Mm.
are you doing that? Are you like obviously you're on a podcast with your name out here? Are you're not secretive from your day job that you're doing this thing completely unrelated, or are you sort of having to sneak away, or how's that balancing out?
Well, I love my day job and I love the company I work for. So I definitely am not trying to rot the system, and I don't think I am. So it's at the moment, because it is fairly new, I'm not being inundated at the moment. So I definitely have the capacity to do both. And I've recently finished reading the 4 Hour Work Week. So
Mhm.
I'm trying to, like you said, with your previous day job, I definitely ensure that I'm completing all of my tasks. Everything is, I'm always meeting my deadlines and things like that. And I definitely try within the 9 to 5, I am working on my day job. In my lunch breaks, or if I do have to take a call or something like that, I definitely make sure I can and try and do it before, after work, or during the lunch breaks. And on weekends, it's just go, go, go. So at the moment, it's fairly manageable, but I'm hoping once things are, get even busier, that I will start to peter the workload.
And I know people are listening to this and they're like, oh, that would be nice. I wish I had time, Alan, or Lyssa, to have to spend an hour at work, or to do lunch breaks. But
Yes.
this is the mindset that it takes. And this is the same concept that you might have heard called like paying yourself first, and which is sort of what you were doing, where you're putting money in an account. A lot of times people are like, that's great. I don't have money to invest in real estate on, right? And I didn't have money to invest in real estate. I was, I was living in the projects in Spanish Harlem in New York. But what the concept before I even bought my first place, but I lived there. And then so the idea is like, you take $100, just start with $100 or $50, whatever feels comfortable, and just automatically deposit, move it to your savings account at a minimum.
Absolutely.
Right. And so you may be $50 short for a month, right? Because you're new to this and you never have 50 extra bucks. But what you'll learn is you'll survive. You'll figure it out.
Yes.
All of a sudden now you're like, oh, I gotta find the cheaper bread and milk or whatever. But by the you're gonna walk instead of take the bus. Like you're gonna be like, I just gotta save $50. And then what happens is, if you just do that, it becomes your new normal, and it doesn't feel like you're adjusting your life. You're like, oh, this is, now I can spend every single paycheck still, but I know I'm getting $50. And then once you get comfortable, you do $100, and then you do 200. The same concept works for your day job. It's, hey, I know we're all busy, and I know your boss expects so much from you, but if you would just take care of you first, like 1 hour, maybe it's a half hour, do a half hour, put it on the calendar, and no matter what, you will not, move that meeting, or maybe you get to work 30 minutes earlier, or you only do working lunches and you're working on yourself. Just carve out 30 minutes for yourself, and you'll I promise you'll still find a way to get all the other work done. But
100%.
and that 30 minutes becomes so enjoyable, because it's all about what you're wanting to do, and it's all about working on your future.
Yeah, that's so true. Even at the moment, we're going back into the office. So for the last 2 years, we've had, remote working and things like that. And I've even realized I get my laptop out on the train to work. It's about a 40-minute train trip, and I'm doing my social media graphics, or I'm emailing people, or, organizing meetings and things like that. And you find the time. I mean, obviously, if you're driving, you can't work on your laptop, but you could have calls and things like that you find the time. If it means something to you, you can get it done.
Yeah. And then you turn that 30 minutes to an hour to 2 hours. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I don't need my day job anymore. Like, cause I'm balancing both. And then, you have the time. So if you're listening, you have the time. I promise you, you have the money. I promise you. It's just prioritizing it and putting it and investing in both in yourself, to get those rewards.
Exactly.
So cool. So, is the ultimate goal then, for you? Are you using real estate to sort of replace your day job income, or your startup, Duprez Productions, podcasting, producing? Is that to replace your day job income? Like, what's the overall? Do you have an overarching goal, or you're just like, I'm interested in this and I'm interested in that. Let's see where it goes. And you might even be interested in your day job too. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No, I am definitely interested in my day job, but I really like the idea of being location and hours independent. So I think that's probably a really big driver at the moment, particularly being in Australia after COVID. I feel pretty landlocked, and I really want to get out. I'm a keen traveler, and with my day job, I need to be at my desk, and I can't do the travel. So ideally, the other business is going to be what I will be focusing most of my time and energy on, and that will take over my day job income. So then I will be able to do other things that I love, like travel, but I can also then be a digital nomad and work on the road. So I'm not bound to any particular place. And even just in the last 6-7 years, I think I've moved about 10 times, and 3 of that was interstate. So I'm definitely an adventurer and wanting to replace my income and be as flexible as I possibly can. So definitely dabbling in the new business and doing some website design and social media management as well, freelancing on the side as well. So Yeah.
So when you make that leap, is it, and maybe I'm gonna follow up with you once this
Mm.
happens. Make sure you follow. No, but are you like, I'm going to make that leap once I completely replace my day job income, or is it like until I can support myself with this digital nomad life and I don't need to save anymore because I've already got two houses with tenants paying down the mortgage. I can stop worrying about retirement savings and I just need my production company to pay for my travels around the world. Is that sort of the
E-
thought process?
Exactly. That's a thought process. Yeah.
Yeah. No.
So
Yeah, I
I'm
love
happy.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So
And,
that's what
and
I want to do.
that that's similar to my concept in House Fire, my book
Mm.
right here over my shoulder, Financial Independent Retire Early. It doesn't have to be houses, which is an asset that pays for your bills or your lifestyle. It could be starting a small business that
Mm.
does that, and or investing passively in other people's businesses or investments, and just so that you get some sort of return. But as long as you have an asset that that's earmarked for a certain choice, whether it's traveling or vacation fund or anything like that, then to me it all makes sense. It all gives purpose to, like, I'm not just buying a house to get richer. I'm buying a house
Mm.
so that I can live in Australia for 6 months, or I'm buying a house so I can pay for my kids college tuition one day, kind of thing. Like,
Exactly. Yeah, having those goals, it's really, really important. And I mean, that's what I'm also trying to do. I suppose in terms of the business, I am trying to diversify. So I've got obviously the houses, and they've already grown so much in value that hopefully within the next 5 or 10 years, I'm able to sell one or both and pay off the mortgages and either continue reinvesting that, living off that income. I'm investing in shares as well, so potentially over time living off those dividends and things. So yeah, definitely just trying to diversify. But at the moment, because the houses are physical assets with people in them, and they are still tied down with mortgages, that they are obviously a set and forget type of investment.
mhm.
But yeah, hopefully in the not too distant future, I can actually start reaping the reward from their value.
So you're a young woman that thinks very different than most. What are your friends and family? Are they like, man, Alyssa, this is crazy? Or are they like, how are you doing this? Or why are you doing this? Like, where are you in the weirdo spectrum? Because to me, you're like my kindred spirit, and I was always the weirdo doing these things. Is this sort of the way things are done in Australia, or are you kind of being, sort
Um,
of going down a different path here?
Well, weirdo is probably the most common name that I've been called throughout my life, most definitely, and I'm proud of it. So I wouldn't say I'm the normal, Aussie down here. We're not all like this. I think only. No, I'm not even going to throw a stat out there. It's probably wrong. But the most amount of investors and things like that, there's not a lot of us. And
Mhm.
um, my family, like I said before, I'm not from a massive investment type of family. And my brother and my sister are fairly similar, though. So I don't know if we grew up with our parents and saw them being conservative, understandably, and we wanted to do things differently.
Yeah.
I guess, from that millennial generation, that we don't want to stay at the same job for 20, 30 years and just do the hard slog. We want the adventure. We want um, more freedom and things like that. My brother has 3 young children, and he wants to have more of a quality of life and spend the time with his family and things like that. So in my family, I'm not weird. We're all kind of looking for that next adventure and next money making type of scheme. And my friends, yeah, they're not necessarily investors either, but they're all incredibly intelligent and are on the property market as well, and investing in other ways, mainly through shares and things like that. But yeah, no, I think I'm not
Yeah.
necessarily common.
Well, I think I was raised similarly in that both my parents were very prudent, stingy, counting every penny,
Yes.
parsimonious, you name it. And so, like, a scarcity mindset, which is what you
Yep.
called it. That's 100% what they were. Um, and so, like, to them, like one mortgage is super scary, right? And then
Mm,
I'm like, I've got 50 mortgages, whatever. And
mm-hmm,
like they're just like that conversation just gives them a heart attack. But to
mm,
me, the way I look at it is and what each mortgage is my future net worth, right? So because I'm not paying that mortgage, someone else is paying
mm,
that mortgage, right?
mm-hmm.
So if I've got $100,000 mortgage here, eventually that means I'm going to have $100,000. So let me go get
Exactly.
another mortgage of $500,000, and someone else is going to pay that down. I'll eventually have 500. So you want to get as many mortgages and credit lines as possible, and then let
Yes.
someone else pay those credit lines off. And that is,
Yes.
yeah, that's assuming that you're making no money. Like it's just it's someone else is paying it down. You're making
Mm-hmm.
no cash flow, but that's
Mm.
never the case. You're also making some money on top. You some cash flow. At least in the United States, you get some tax breaks here as well, and so you're getting paid like 3 or 4 or 5 different ways on every single house. But
Mm.
if you just look at one, that all I say is, set it and forget it. I don't need to invest in retirement funds because one house is whatever the mortgage is. That's my future net worth, whatever that.
Mm-hmm.
And typically the house will appreciate double, triple, quadruple by the end of that mortgage anyway. So
Yes.
why not just put all these little fishing lines out there and then reel in a big fish down the road? Um,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the things that is, there's that argument of should I invest in shares or should I invest in property? And I've never understood, I mean, I invest in shares because I want to diversify, but it's nowhere near the amount that I invest in property. And that's because I feel like I have to put my own cash on a regular basis into my share portfolio, whereas I put, yes, a significant chunk of cash down for the property deposits. But yeah, I have someone paying them off over the next 20 or 30 years that will increase in value that I am then able to um, use in my retirement. So my Queensland property has already gained something like 76% in 6 years
Nice.
since I've owned it. And that hopefully is going to be able to pay off that property and my Newcastle property if that's where I'm going to end up living. And I'll be mortgage free in the next 10 years. Like it's, yeah, I just don't understand why people don't want to do that. And
Right.
I put no cash in.
Yeah. Right.
Mm,
Exactly. And then if you're so inclined, once you're mortgage free, you get a cash out refinance, and go take that money to go buy more credit lines and more debts to further your net worth in the future.
exactly.
It all depends what your goals are, whether you want that cash flow or net worth in the future, and see where it takes you. But
That's it.
yeah, no, I that's what this is all about, is teaching people like this. You can really change your life in baby steps, and a lot of times it
Mm,
starts with a house, a lot of times it starts with a business, and
mm-hmm.
you're doing both over there, and it's going to be really interesting to follow your journey and your path.
Oh, thank
um,
you.
is there anything else you want to share with us, and how people can get in touch with you and follow your story, or if they want your podcasting real estate services and or
Yeah,
businesses?
sure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So, yeah, you can find me at Duprez Productions on Instagram and Facebook. And yeah, hopefully we'll be growing even further and follow along from there.
And that's
Thank
Duprez
you.
at Duprez Productions.com. Lyssa Borham from Australia. Thank you for teaching us Australian real estate, motivating us, showing others how you can do it step by step. And, you're leveraging all the tools, which I love, especially sort of the living with your parents short term. So you can do this and that, and spending some extra time at work and off work to kind of get your business up and running. And you're thinking about, you're putting you first, and that's the every success is putting you first, whether it's putting you first and saving $50 or saving an hour of your time at 9 to 5 to start a new business. So thank you for teaching that lesson today, Lyssa.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks, Alan. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, guys, for listening to the House of AC. Tune in, check us out at the House of AC. Well, I appreciate all your comments and reviews. This is also showed later video format if you're listening on podcasts on our YouTube channel at the House of AC. So you can follow along there and share it. Thanks, guys.